Hello and welcome to another Macros for Editors. This is actually a rerun of last night's live streaming, which didn't go wonderfully well. I was having problems with the new technology, so what I decided to do was to use the material that we generated last night and produce it as a video. So I had one question sent in to me before the session, the live streaming session, from Laura. Thank you, Laura. Brilliant question. And I'm sure it's something which everyone can relate to, and certainly it's a problem that I've been wrestling with for many years. So Laura says, I'm somewhat overwhelmed by the number of macros and I suspect I'm not alone. No, you are not, Laura. Where do I start? So the list of macros and brief descriptions helps, but it's a lot to wrap one's head around. For example, Perfectit walks you through a process and you have the option of skipping steps that you don't want or need. I've tried some of the other Word plugins, but they are too packaged. Often they cause more problems than they solve. Your macros are a wonderful a la carte. However, I still need to develop an ideal workflow as to which macros to run in what order. Well, absolutely, yes. That is very important and something that which we need to tackle, and I am working on it, and I'm very excited by this whole idea of trying to analyze what's going on. Since you're an editor, I'm directing these questions at you regarding what to do, but I'm really looking for your recommendations. So my questions are: when starting a project, what are the first 5 macros you run before diving into manual editing? What are the 5, or she's saying, or relevant number, macros you make sure to run after manual editing before calling it done? Yes, now that's exactly the area in which I'm wanting to go into, and so let's see how we can start. So the question really is, which macros do you want? And I've often had this question when I've been running macro trainings, is do you need to use macros and Perfectit? And so I've been thinking about that recently. We've had a bit of a discussion on the SFEP forum. I've talked to Dan Human of Intelligent Editing a little bit by email, and I'm working on thinking out how these things can work together and make life easier for editors. But the ways that I've offered help before have really been focused on the macros, saying I've got some macros, you can use them. So I liken that to being an ice cream seller. I've tried more of late to be task oriented, saying, well, what jobs are you trying to do, and therefore what macros do you want? And so I would liken that to being an odd job man, but it is still based on individual jobs. What for me now, a work in progress. I won't be dealing with this now, but I'm just doing a heads up. Let's look at this in a project-oriented way. What's the overall gain? What are you trying to do as an editor? And if we can start from that and work as a systems designer and say, well, okay, we're trying to do something. How can we develop a system that will enable us to do our job more effectively? And as any system designer knows, it's more than just looking at the 16 jobs that the editor does, 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 16 or whatever, and say, okay, let's give them a program for 1 and a program for 2. We've got to look at the whole thing and try to see if maybe there are different ways of working so that we can work to the strengths of what macros can do, and then by changing our way of working, get an overall system which is more effective. I've talked in terms of, mentioned the terms of a new conceptual framework. It's a bit highfalutin, but that's the idea, is to try and think of it as a whole, give it a holistic view rather than just dealing with the detail. So I'm afraid that's a work in progress. That is to come, so watch this space. So my question then is, well, Laura's asked a question. At the moment, today, what can I give you? It's no good saying, if she's asking me how to get to Edinburgh, it's no good saying, well, I wouldn't start from here. Here is where we are today. I have a certain amount that I can offer, and what have I got to offer? Albeit at what I've called the odd job level. Okay, there's a fair amount of stuff in my book. and if I load my book up, my book is loaded by clicking a keystroke which loads up the files, needless to say. We don't actually need the macros for the moment. It's what's in the book itself where all the writing and description is held. So three sections there: my favourite macros, the macro menu, and preparing for a job book. So at the beginning we've got my favourite macros. Here we go. So jump to there. This was written ages ago, and I have fiddled around with it slightly, but it's probably a bit out of date, really. So I just suggested what were the macros that I felt most helpful, and so those are the sorts of things I've got there listed. You can have a look and see if that helps. Then there was a version for proofreading, because the macros can still be used even if you're only proofreading and not actually editing. Then we've got the section, that was for proofreading, so that's some of the macros you might use for proofreading, and the order in which well, not order, but the actions that I took and the results. But there's more here about the broader picture of what you do when, or what I do when anyway. I'm not saying this is what everybody else has to do, because we all work differently. So here we have a set of actions and the results that you get. So that was that. Oh yeah, the macro menu was the other thing. Again, I use a macro. If I use my Smart Finder and type MM, it'll take me to the beginning of the macro menu, what I've called the macro menu. So again, it's sort of, here are things I'm offering for you to do jobs. So bookmarks, things, it's headed in subject areas: bookmarks, comments, document analysis, fields, figures, file handling, formatting, global changes, and so on. But it's still hundreds of lines of text, which is not a helpful way if you're trying to say, well, how can macros help me? But that is for what for what use it is. It's there. And if you're looking for something, this is electronically searchable, obviously, so you can look through for words, keywords of things that you might want. So let's move that out of the way. From recent training sessions that I've done, I've tried to begin at least to do some conceptual work and saying, well, what's going on? What are macros doing for you? Okay, it's still macro focused, but the way I've presented it at some of the sessions I've done has been in terms of three types of macros: those that are just for analysis, those that you would use while you're actually reading the text, so I've called them topical or line editing macros, and then there are the global change type macros that change the whole of the text at one go. So, and what I've said about them is that analysis macros are perfectly safe, because obviously all you're doing is looking at the text, trying to find any inconsistencies, so that warns you as to what you're likely to face when you start actually reading the text. The topical or line editing, you can use those without any danger, but you obviously have to use them with care. Now the global change ones, these are fast, yes, but they're extremely dangerous. So we're looking at the moment at the types of macros, but as you can see, that's not an order, that's not a system, but for what it's worth, it's there. It may be worth your while listening on a bit longer. There's not much more in terms of actual concepts, but just in case it's helpful, and because things have changed recently, I've got some new macros. Let's expand those three headings and see what's available. So on the analysis front, where we're just examining the text, we've got Dockerlyze, long-standing, many years ago that was produced, which deals with things like spelling and punctuation. Proper Noun-Alyze, okay, that's the different spellings of proper nouns, and it tells you how many times each occurs. full name analyze extends that to 2 or 3 names, so that if they if the character has different spellings of their name, you can pick that up. Hyphenalize, okay, if you've got some hyphenated words, then we can find out how often they occur as 2 words, one word, 2 words, hyphenated, or n-dash spaced. So that's a new feature, the n-dash spacing. A newer macro is word pairalize. If you have something like speed check as 1 or 2 words, if it doesn't appear as either dash separated or hyphenated, then hyphenalize won't pick it up. So I've written a program that goes through the whole document, looking at all the pairs of words and trying to find if any given pair of words also occurs as a single word. Then spelling error lister produces an alphabetic list of all the individual spelling errors, which can be useful to feed in because it tells you what the inconsistencies might be. And another recent one, capitalize, which looks at words that do or don't have an initial capital letter, and again gives you the frequency. Yes, then the topical, I mean, you're aware of these probably, so if we're wanting to swap words around while we're reading, or swap characters around, there are things to do that. Then multi-switch, where you're changing words, and was, were, continuous, continual, and then if you've got numbers that want changing to words, you can use that. Anyway, and then the global ones, Fredit, which was the sort of big time saver, but dangerous, and you need to think about it. Right, well, all I'm offering at the moment is a load of tools. Watch this space for a conceptual framework. We'll try and see what we can do on that. And if anyone wants to talk to me about it, got ideas, please share, please get in touch. So I'm your obsessive compulsive problem solver, Lord of the Macros. Do give me an email if you want to have a chat. Okay, bye for now.